been with Carrie for coming on 14 years. You married within 5 months of meeting her.
Correct.
How did you know she was the one?
Before I even talked to her, I knew. Met her, she was working at a nightclub then, doing bottle service. Yeah, I walked in the club and looked straight at her from across, and I just knew that was her. I said to myself, I'm like, fuck, this girl's gonna ruin my life.
Serving nearly a decade in the US military, most of which within special operations, under the notion that he would never have a wife, a family, a life outside of work, until one day, a woman named Carrie accidentally came into his life and changed it forever. Co-founding and leading Bali's most known and loved gym, Bambu Fitness, our guest today is Will Henke. Do you think that the military was what you expected?
I was shocked.
In what way?
I went to the recruiter's office and he was like, the things that people don't see that entrepreneurs should be doing, like staying up late, getting tasks done. Like everyone complains about, man, there's just not enough hours in the day. But it's funny if you think about it, like there is, if you're willing to be uncomfortable.
You said that there was a period in your life where you believed that you were going to live a life where you had no family connection. Do you know back then why you didn't want any connection to family? If you guys are a regular listener of the Pocket Podcast, you would know that I absolutely love Switch Nutrition and all of their products, and I've been promoting them since the very, very start. And my love for Switch Nutrition has just gone to the next level with their brand new product, Sleep Plus. This is a designated sleep formula. It is made to help wind you down, calm the central nervous system down, get you into a more restful state so you can fall into that deep and REM sleep sooner into bed, resulting in a more restful and meaningful sleep so you can wake up ready to attack the next day's activities. I've been loving this thing. There is the tropical flavor, which I love with a bit of ice and some cold water, or if I'm feeling like a hot chocolate, I'll have the chocolate flavor. Overall, it's amazing and you'll get results, and it's been going crazy all around the internet and online now with their amazing reviews all across the globe. So if you guys want to try out Switch Nutrition, you can go to the link in the description or the show notes below, and you can use code Chris Griffin and you'll get 15% off your entire order. Alternatively, go to switchnutrition.com.au and use code Chris Griffin for 15% off your entire order, and you can try out this Sleep Plus alongside all of their other amazing products. They will not disappoint. But let's get right back to the episode. Will, you mentioned that you like to go all in with most things that you do. Why is that?
Good question. I feel like if something's worth doing, it's worth doing 100%. And like going half-assed into something is not going to get you the result that you're hoping for when you initially say, I want to do something. So if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And I think that in this day and age, when people see someone going after the things they want to go after, they call it obsessive, or they call it, I don't know, other words that I feel don't align. But for me, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And that to me is being all in.
Why do you think people are not all in? Do you think it's because they don't actually know or have a big enough reason as to why they're doing it in the first place? Or why do you think people don't go all in the first place?
Fear.
Fear of what?
I think whatever they're most fearful of. I mean, I think fear is one of those emotions that is paralyzing. If you don't know how to do it, or if you're scared of failing, fear of failing can be a stronger emotion than the desire to win. And that's what like handicaps people, or like fully paralyzes someone from actually like chasing something. Think of how many people are like, oh, like I'm going to film like a podcast, for example. Like I don't have the right equipment. I don't have like the soundboard. I don't have the cinematic cameras. I don't have the acoustics. Then they just don't do it. And they just don't take the first step. And you look at people that are actually doing things that are well, or that you find admirable. They didn't start as a perfectionist. They started as like, fuck it, like take the first step. All right, that didn't work. Okay, like, you know, the cameras that we were trying to get going earlier, like if we were like, all right, fuck it, we're just going to do it. If we get to the end, worst case, we just have a good conversation that no one knows about. That's two of us. That's not that terrible, you know?
I agree. This fear of failure concept's interesting though. I've thought about it a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that I truly believe that most people don't actually fear failure. They fear what other people are going to think of them if they fail. So like the example that I think of with this is if you're playing a video game by yourself in your room and you die in the game, you care, but like you're not that phased. You just respawn and you start again. But like when everyone's watching you, you got all your mates around and you die, you care a lot more. And I think in life, we're in the public eye a lot, or we think we are. We have this perception of what people think of us, and that's causing us to have this fear of what if something goes wrong? Would you think that would be a massive restrictor for people?
I think so. I think people, especially in this day and age where media is such the forefront of what everyone sees, doom scrolling, whatever you want to call it, you have this excessive consumption of seeing people do things. And for the most part, 10 seconds after you see them do it, you really don't care. You know what I mean? Like you don't care what they're doing or who they're doing or any of that stuff. But I think that if you we talked earlier about podcasts, and I'm probably of like the small percentile of people that don't read books very often, don't listen to podcasts very often. And when people ask me, they'll be like, oh, like, have you listened to like this podcast, or can you recommend these books or anything? And I'm like, oh, like I can read, but I don't read. And they're like, oh, well, as a business owner, like you should be reading like 25 to 50 books a year. And I'm like, sick. If you have that time, I don't have that time. And I think in the beginning, I started to think like, oh, like maybe they think that I'm not like an entrepreneur, or I'm a successful entrepreneur because I'm not reading these books. That is some standard. And then after I realized that I don't need to do that in order to like have a successful business, just like you don't need a business degree to be a successful entrepreneur. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And also though, the thing is, which is interesting about consuming podcasts, and when you're in business and you're trying to troubleshoot real life business problems, most of the time the podcasts that you're listening to are not going to solve any of your problems. They're not really even going to help because they're not even relevant to what you're going through right now. I think learning, when you're specifically listening to a podcast to learn about something, it should be relevant to what you're going through in your life right then. Because say, for example, someone might be wanting to start a gym or move somewhere or go into the military, which we can talk about a little bit. And listening to something like this can give them some inspiration, some clarity, maybe answer some questions that they have. But if you're listening to it with the intention of, okay, this is going to transform my life, then you're probably extremely delusional, right?
100%.
There's an enjoyment component to it, feeling like you're understood, because podcasting, especially in a conversational sense, people can feel a bit more understood because maybe they don't feel like they can relate to the people around them, and these people that are listening to, they can. But it's not going to be this vehicle that unlocks all of this financial success or whatever you want to deem as success. I want to talk a bit more about the gym and all the stuff you're doing in Bali. But before we do that, I'd love to give a little bit of context to you, a little bit younger, and dive into your time at the military. Did you go in at 19?
So I actually joined on my mother's birthday when I was 18. And then while I was in boot camp, I turned 19 shortly thereafter. So yeah, I joined pretty much end of 18, just when I started and turned 19.
Why so? What made you want to go into join the army?
Well, my first, initially I wanted to be a professional basketball player. Back then I was tall.
Still are tall.
Yeah, like for people that aren't playing professional sports, but then you put me against people who are my height playing professional basketball, I'm below average. And also from where I played, I was an above average player where I played in Florida in high school. But comparatively, I was a average player. I played at a decently high level, but once I had a little bit of an injury when I was playing an exhibition game for a college scouting camps, my second backup plan was always military. My father was in the military. My stepfather was in the military. Both my grandfathers in the military. So it was kind of one of those things where I was raised, and it was like, hey, in order to grow as a man, you need to kind of go in and figure out your path. So for me, when professional sports was out of the picture, it was right, I already know what I'm doing. Went to went to play college basketball at a lower community college, did one semester, and I was like, absolutely not. I can't sit behind a desk for another second. So went to recruiter's office and joined up.
Wow. So in your mind then it's there's no other option? Is it because of your dad's path and him being in the military, you kind of like, okay, well, if I'm not doing this, then the option is go join the army? Or what was your thought going on in that moment?
No, it's not because my father and the men before me did it. That was commendable and respectable and why they did it. I got to speak to all, I say three of those, my grandfather on my father's side. I didn't get to talk to him very much. He passed away when I was quite young. But some of the things he did was, like as a kid, when you hear about what your grandfather did in the Navy back in some of the wars, like gives you goosebumps and chills. But it was one of those things where I heard all their different sides, from military police officer in a canine unit to search and rescue in the Coast Guard to, in a gunship, in an aerial gunship in the Navy, and all these things. I was like, okay, like I think I can learn something. And I wasn't super passionate about, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I do to this day. Who knows with the military, how it is now. But back when I was younger, I was like, all right, well, worst case scenario, I guess worst case, you die. But like best case scenario, you come out, you get leadership skills, and you learn things about yourself, which is something that I learned about myself very well. I learned how to be by myself. I learned how to be okay with being alone, and not even okay. I learned how to like being alone. Never plan on getting married. And this year I'll be, celebrating my 14 years with my wife, which is something I never thought that would be for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Do you think that the military was what you expected? So going into the US Army, having an expectation of what you're about to get into and then getting into it, were you shocked or was it what you expected?
I was shocked.
In what way?
So when I joined, I went to the recruiter's office and he was like, what would you like to do? And I was like, I want to jump out of planes and help people. And my thought with helping people back then was like shooting people. That's what you see and that's what you hear about. And in the Army or in the military in America, you have what's called the ASVAB. And essentially it's an aptitude and battery test for like a placement of where the military best sees you fitting as like a resource and how to best utilize you in there, what they need. So I took that. And if you score a certain level on your GT score, you can't do certain jobs because they deem you as too valuable and it's an ineffective use of resources. So when I went in, they got my score and they were like, all right, you can do one of three things: medical, communication, or intelligence. None of which is what I wanted to do. So I joined and ended up going into the military intelligence route.
What does that consist of?
A myriad of different things. Every facet within the U.S. military serves an important purpose. And when working in a synchronized manner, it's beautiful. You can help a lot of people. You can make a lot of effective change. So military intelligence is like a very like overarching general theme. You have so many things within that realm, but it's learning to gather intelligence to help to further the mission set of whatever is expected for the outcome of what the goal is. And I played a small part in a very small part actually with what the community that I was in. Mm-hmm. So I joined up and then got put into a military intelligence route. And I thought it was going to be this like, okay, cool. I'm going to do like some cool stuff. And I was just surrounded by a bunch of very, very overly intelligent people that made me feel very stupid. And I was the fittest among the bunch. So it was very weird being in that, World of Warcraft, Doom, all these computer games that you see, they were infatuated with it. And I was not.
So you weren't in the special forces, were you? Or
so I was in the special operations community. So I guess this is the time for a long story. So, I joined, and you have in the military, you have your fitness tests, right? The Army has their Army physical fitness test. Back then, when you couldn't hurt people's feelings, you could actually score more than a perfect score. So you did like a 2-mile run, a timed 2-mile run, 2 minutes of push-ups and 2 minutes of sit-ups. And if you got perfect scores within the age that you were, you could score 100 in each. So 300 was essentially the perfect score. And if you hit a perfect score in each of them, if you did more than what was perfect, you can go into the bonus category. So 360, 400 on your PTs. So back then I would score well above like perfect in all of them because the standards were quite low. That's one of the problems now is like they've lowered the standard to accommodate people to keep them in. Yeah, it's a very strange. This is one of the things that was shocking to me when I got in.
Doesn't make sense that you'd think military high standards, but you're telling me that it was low standards.
Lower than expected.
Because normally it's the cream of the crop, right?
That would be special operations.
Right.
And that's where luckily I was brought into that by accident. So among the group of military intelligence people that were, I'd say nerdy, but like for reason, like you want nerdy people who are very intellectual to be able to get the things and understand the roles of what they're doing. I did that well, but I also was very into fitness. You know, I played team sports growing up. I found enjoyment taking care of myself. I didn't take care of that back then. And to this day, I'm still very much a bro. Love it and go in and get a good pump sesh, you know, like do stuff outside and active. So while in the off time, people that I was in school with were playing video games and doing whatever that is, I was out training. And there was one person that was in charge of my unit, was first sergeant at the time, took notice of it. So he noticed that I was cleaning up shop and all these PT tests and saw me outside off hours training on my own. I went and competed in a competition called Soldier of the Year and did that within the Army, which includes like physical fitness, land navigation, combat medical, all these different things. So at the end of my initial schooling, I got a phone call and he was like, hey, like first sergeant wants to see you in his office. And I was like, fuck did I do? So went there, sat down, and he actually was in special forces and just so happened to be the first sergeant of this unit, training unit that I was in for my initial training. And he was like, hey, like your scores, you've scored quite well within your testing. You have your orders to go to this very strategic unit, non-physical whatsoever. And I wasn't very happy about it. But he was like, how would you feel about going in and to special operations and using what you do and helping a lot of people that don't have that skill set? And I was like, yeah. By the time I walked back to my barracks, my new orders were already in my inbox. And like he doesn't change them, but that just goes to show the reach that he had. And I'm very grateful for him. I never saw him a day after that. I'm very grateful because he changed the trajectory of my life with one conversation and one noticing and one action he took. And which is something a lesson I've learned quite a bit is the impact one person can have on one person's life. So then from there, my orders changed. I went and, to airborne school and all these other specialty schools that I needed to go to be an effective asset to this community. So then I went and joined special operations, went through special forces assessment and selection, stayed within my time as military intelligence and was able to make some productive changes to help people.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so one thing led to another. It's so interesting seeing this story. And how many years were you in the military for?
Just shy of a decade.
Just shy of a decade.
Yeah.
And you mentioned one of the main lessons and takeaways you learned earlier in this conversation, you said was being comfortable alone and in solitude. Is there any other key takeaways or things you learned from your time spent with the military? It's Monday morning, and you know what that means? It means that I just got my Papa Macros delivery for the week, and Papa Macros has been an absolute game changer for me, and let me tell you why. If you guys have been following along, you would know that I am doing a Hyrox competition this month, so with the increase in training load, I also need to increase the amount of food that I'm eating, but when you tie that in with all the other commitments I have, like running this show, I only have so many hours in a day, and Papa Macros has been a game changer for me because I'm getting these meals that I can rest easy knowing that they're nutritious, they're delicious, but but extremely convenient as well. But let's have a look in this box and see what we have for dinner and lunch this week. Some of my favorites from this week is the chimichurri steak. We have the rump steak and jasmine rice, the salmon poke bowl. This one is amazing. The Cajun chicken, and the great thing about all of these meals is the portion sizes are like no other. It is so hard to find a meal prep company that actually gives you enough food to make you feel full, and Papa Macros definitely doesn't shy away from that. So if you want to take the cooking out of your hands and still remain to have nutritious, delicious, and convenient meals, then look no further than Papa Macros. I love these things, and I'm sure you will too. So hit the link in the description or the show notes below, or go to papamacros.com.au and use the code Chris Griffin at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your entire order. Once again, hit the link in the description or the show notes below, or go to papamacros.com.au and use the code Chris Griffin at checkout. Let's get right back to the show. Is there any other key takeaways or things you learnt from your time spent with the military?
Yes. A lot of things. I'm just thinking now of like, what's the first one that jumps out? But like, you know, in various shooting schools, you know, they teach you like uncomfortable is alive and comfortable is dead. And like, you take that, for me at least, into my business practices is, you know, complacency is something you never want to get into.
You said uncomfortable is a lie, and what is dead?
Alive.
Oh, alive?
Alive.
And comfortable is dead.
So imagine if you're a sniper and you have your ghillie suit on, which is like the frilly suit you wear to blend in and be not seen. And you make one move and you give away your position. And you move because you're uncomfortable and you're trying to get comfortable. That small little thing for me was one lesson that took me a while to really learn and apply it to how I do business. You know, like you said, right now you're going to be moving away to go to LA. You're uprooting from your home like country to go live somewhere you don't know anyone, to make yourself uncomfortable, to grow your business. That's not an easy decision that people will make. They will likely stay, oh, I don't want to get up early. I'll stay in bed. It's warm here. You know, I have my partner here. My dog is here. But like, if you don't take action to make effective change, that takes a level of uncomfort. And in my opinion, that was one lesson that stayed with me among many that I use daily. Is like, you can do something like, oh, I'm comfortable here. But it's like, all right, well, how is this serving you? How is this actually making you better to be complacent? And that, like, you analyzing that and making it applicable to your life is important, at least for me.
It comes down to this concept of choose your hard. And I think about this a bit, how you're explaining, like, it's uncomfortable to move to a new place. It's uncomfortable to try that new thing that you have no idea how to do. When you go into the gym and you've never done cleans before and you have to do it, like, it's uncomfortable. It's not fun to do it. But this thing around choose your hard, it's like, it's hard to get up early. It's hard to go in an ice bath. It's hard to train. It's hard to have a successful business. There's a lot of challenges. But it's also hard being broke. It's also hard being fat and overweight. It's hard in so many different areas. There's hard in everything that you do. So choosing your hard is a cool framework to be able to go through hard times that are bettering yourself easier. Because like, I just look at when people say like, how do you do it? How do you keep going? How do you keep pushing past all of those challenges? I go, what's the alternative? Like sitting here doing nothing and having no sense of fulfillment in my life? Like that, for me, seems a whole lot harder than doing what I'm doing now, which is deemed as hard. I think people kind of disregard the alternative to what they're doing and think that it's kind of like, they disregard the alternative to something that typically seems challenging and don't realize that everything has its own challenges in life. But so you mentioned the solitude piece, being comfortable during the military. Was there a lot of alone time, or was it more so being away from the people that you love? Or what was the main thing that taught you this comfort in solitude?
Within special operations, it's not like you're not in a large unit. like you are, but your teams are quite small. If your team is fully stacked, you have 12 to 15 guys. And each of those men were responsible for a lot of things. So you don't work in a team. As a whole, you're a collective, yes, you're a team. But then everyone is relying on the other to be able to carry their weight and not be micromanaged. And I think you learn how to hold yourself accountable. You learn how, if you have to go spend, 5 to go out and about and stay somewhere for a while by myself to get information or learn something or do something that's helpful for the team, you fucking figure it out. And part of that is being on a team. I think that's such an underutilized thing, and that kids don't fully learn in team sports growing up. Is like everyone's on a team and they're trying to win, but the teams that do the best are the ones that are the most cohesive. And it's because they put the needs of the team in front of their own. It's one thing my father taught me when I was little. And, he always said FCS. This was an acronym back that I took away from him when I was younger. It's family, country, self. Like your family is first and foremost, most important. Your country is second. Your third is yourself. So you're always putting people above you. And that to me comes from a team sports background as well. Going to like a very fraternity driven, back then it was an all male special operations that I was in. So the brotherhood that you had of that was so important. And people could not be good at their jobs, but they will force themselves to be better if they know they are the weak link. And I think nowadays you can't tell someone that they're a weak link. It's such a soft culture that people are like, oh, you're doing a great job. And I think if someone's not doing a great job, you should fucking tell them like, hey man, like you're not doing a great job. You should figure it out. And if you need help, come ask me. And it's just a very cultural shift that's happened in the last decade. And one of the reasons I've decided to get out of the military and kind of pursue what I'm doing now.
So FCS, you said? So family, country, self.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, a lot of people talk about putting themselves first to be able to have a full cup to pour from.
I cannot disagree more.
And why is that?
You ever see people that are really into their birthdays? Like I'm sure you can think of someone that I say that now. Like
they love their birthdays.
They love their fucking birthday and it's all about them. I cannot align with that. Like I just think that if someone, like for perfect example, we have a neighbor next door where we live now here. It was literally 2 nights ago. And they're vacationing here and they were being super loud at like midnight. So I went over and knocked on the door and I was like, guys, like me and my wife live here. We work here. Can you please be considerate and turn your music down and stop shouting? Back and forth, it ended up happening. Then, 2 days ago, whatever it was, she came and knocked on my door and was like, hey, today is my birthday. Just so you know, we're going to be celebrating my birthday, so it's going to be a little bit louder tonight. Not even like asking if it was okay. She was telling me what was happening. I said, okay. She was like, we're going to be coming back from a restaurant called Taboo. We're going to be coming back from Taboo around 2:30 in the morning, and we're going to be partying until like in the morning. And I was like, how inconsiderate are you? And she was like, it's my birthday. And I was like, I don't care if it's my mom's birthday or the president's birthday. The fact that you're putting the needs of celebrating your life over 4 people, I have 2 friends staying at my house right now, and my wife. You're putting the needs of celebrating your life that comes around once every 365 days above the sleep and health of 4 other people next door to you. And I was like, shame on you. Like, it's such a different culture for me where it's like, it's my day. It's not of my concern.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand is like this day and age, everyone's like, you got to be selfish. Like put yourself first. What good leader that you can name in your life or that you know of that you don't even know puts themselves first? And that's what Instagram and social media as a whole does. It gives everyone this like free pass to make whatever justification they want that's trendy that gets them more likes and views. The same reason why like you see like the big entrepreneurs, them filming themselves doing whatever they're doing You know, like how often do you see, I don't know, let's go top, Elon Musk. How often do you see behind the scenes footage of him working on his business? Fucking never. Because like the time it takes to set up a camera and actually think about, oh, I should record this for content purposes. No, you do it. If there's something that needs to be done, you do it. We opened our gym. We had an expansion down the bodybuilding room that opened up like end of July. And it was an absolute train wreck getting that open as soon as possible. So, you know, I spent 40 hours straight making sure the equipment was set up, getting in there with the guys, doing it. And a guy came in that I know who has a gym in Australia, and he was like, man, like, why didn't you like just set up your phone and take some footage? And I was like, because I was fucking busy. And I'm busy doing something that's not for me. Like opening this gym is not for me. It's to better the experience for the people that are coming here. And that's the disconnect I have with a lot of business owners these days, is they're so concerned with like showing the journey of their business other than showing the business, like what it currently has been. And yeah, it's not to get ranty.
Yeah,
but.
I can understand that. And I do agree to some degree of that as well. I also see the other side too. And I see this ability for someone to document something in the hopes that that can inspire people to do their own journey. Because like if you're looking at Elon Musk, like think about how many people actually would really want to see him do what he does. And so it's not in a selfish way where it's like, well, look at me. It's going, okay, you've actually created real life world change. You've changed the world, Elon Musk has. And I would love to know what a day in his life looks like. And so I think it's still in a way they can inspire people all around the world that's not even having the opportunity to see that physically in live in the flesh, whilst at the same time in a humble way that's not about me. But when you say about leaders not making it about them, it's so true. You know, I see the best leaders are the ones that lead by example. They're doing the thing, right? Like they're showing, they're not telling people how to do it. They're leading and by example doing their thing. And then a byproduct of that is people go, oh shit, I should be doing what he's doing. And I see true leaders not make it about them and just kind of lead the pack. I think that's really powerful for you with Bambu and having to lead that. And when it comes to hiring and having a team and making sure that you're leading by example and making the team feel really empowered to create their own magic and make everyone else in the gym feel great. Has that been a big focus for you with Bambu, just making sure that you're getting the right team and leading them in the best way possible?
It's been the focus. If I were to ask you, like, what do you think is, you've been training at the gym, you've come there, we met there recently. What do you think is the product of Bambu?
I was thinking about it. And what I said to you off air, which is interesting, is because I've not been doing the classes, but what I said off air is it's a destination spot. It's a decision. People are coming to Uluwatu for Bambu. And I think it's this weird thing where it encompasses everything. You want classes, you can train there. You want open gym to do your own thing, you can train there. There's loud music, it gets the morale high. Everyone's lovely. All the team are saying hello and helping you out wherever they can. But then you've got the best food and all of the thing there. I feel like it encompasses this environment that people want to spend multiple hours just being there. But yeah, I mean, I can't pinpoint something in specific, but what for you is at the forefront of that?
The people that we bring on, not just the coaches,
all the staff,
the kitchen, the barista, the front of house, the delivery guys, the receptionists, the maintenance teams, the bathroom attendant, everyone. And it's making sure that everyone feels like they're part of what we really feel is that it's a family. And when you walk into the gym, you should feel like it's a big family. And that makes everyone feel like they're at home. That's super important. And for the coaches, specifically, like you were asking about, that is one of my paramount focuses, is finding the right people to be the face of the classes. And if you're not doing classes, like you're still, I guarantee you still, coaches have still said hi to you. And it's not because they feel forced to go say something. It's because they want to.
Yeah.
And I don't hire. I was telling you also off air, like I get resumes daily. I've hired one person from a resume, and it was from a need, and it was just kind of just very random how it happened. And it wasn't because of her resume. It was because of she referenced going to a seminar that my friend led. That was the only reason that I actually looked at, looked more into her resume. Most people that come in the door, if I see that they're a good person and ask if they're a coach or if they want to coach, then I'll chat to them and say, hey, like, yeah, we have an opening. And that's kind of how we base things off. I want people who are genuinely coming to the gym because they're attracted to it. They feel like they want to come there. People are like, oh, I've never been there, but I want to work there. Sorry. Nothing against you at all as a person, but like, that's not what I'm looking for. And gyms that I feel hire based off of like resumes and CVs can't create that culture. And the culture is what helps the community create itself, like we talked about earlier. Yeah, I'm not concerned about creating a community. That's not my job. I'm not a dictator. I'm not a cult leader. Communities are made on their own by the people in it. We just create the space for people to feel seen, inclusive, welcome, inspired, all these things, because that's what the variable is that you need to create an area where people feel happy and at home. And that's really what we want.
Yeah, and you definitely do that even with the, as you said, the front of house staff and everyone. They remember your names and reference you throughout the day with your name, making you feel really at home, like they know you. And, you know, even spending a couple of days there and all of a sudden you feel like a local, and that's heavily comes down to the team, which you definitely do an awesome job for. And for you, like with Bambu, how did this all come about? Like, is there a thing where you, I mean, I know obviously you had heavily focused with your fitness, you've been interested in it for a very long time, but when it came to starting Bambu, what was the inspiration behind that?
We wanted, Carrie and I, my wife, we wanted to move down to Uluwatu. We've been in Bali now. Gosh, it'll be 8 years this May. We were in Canggu for most of that. And I honestly did not enjoy living in Canggu. I felt very out of place. I wasn't able to make friends, like guy friends. As a married man, I'm not interested in making female friends. But like making genuine friends was very challenging. Back when I moved here, the demographic of the men that were in Bali fell really into kind of two categories from where I stood. Guys that were trying to find themselves, and guys that didn't know, that were trying to figure out what was next, what they were doing. And I knew who I was. I knew what I was doing. So like I wouldn't give my time to people that didn't align with like where I was going. So some would say it's lonely, but like I said, I'm very comfortable being alone. I have my wife, I have my 2 dogs. And I also had businesses that I was actively working at growing. You know, the things that people don't see that entrepreneurs should be doing, like staying up late, getting tasks done. Like everyone complains about, man, there's just not enough hours in the day. But it's funny if you think about it, like there is, if you're willing to be uncomfortable, if you're willing to get up early, or if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of sleep to stay up and get whatever blog post written, or if you're unable to hire a website team to build your website, figure out how to build a WordPress site by watching, you know, YouTube channels or YouTube videos. And that's my focus. You know, for me, it was like, all right, my wife and I have an active adventure and fitness retreat company called Wander Fit Retreats. And it was like, all right, we couldn't afford to hire social media teams. And so Carrie had to figure out how to grow a social media account. We couldn't hire a website team. So I had to figure out how to create a website and write blog posts back before ChatGPT was around, and kind of all these things. So it was a struggle, but it was something where I was like, cool, like this is something that gives me purpose and passion, and I can build it with my wife. And it gave me something to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And you spoke about Carrie a few times, and I met her yesterday, and seeing you two operate together, it's like this awesome power couple. And I was speaking with Will, and not you, Will, the other Will. and just saying, I was just like, we need to find Carrie's. Like, we need to find this for our life, because just seeing you guys do your thing and seeing how passionate she is with all the development stuff that you guys are doing and all the work is so cool. And you said earlier you've been with her for, it's coming on 14 years now? Or?
Yeah. So we met February 5th back in 2011. And we got married the 25th of June that same year. So 5 months later. But before I go on, I realized I didn't answer your question before. So while we were living in Canggu, I didn't quite like that area. So we'd come to Uluwatu often and loved it here. But there was no suitable training facility for how I trained and how Carrie trained. And after we'd gone down here for like 2 days and we should go back to Canggu, we want to train and, move a bit. After that happened a few times, I was like, man, like a gym should open down here. I'd move down here in a heartbeat. And after no one did it for 6 months to a year, I told Carrie, I was like, fuck it, man. Let's do it. I could run a gym. Like I'm confident with the abilities that I have as a coach and in running a team, her design, and now we're partnered with two of our great friends. And, Reka, she runs the cafe, and, she is for the cafe what I am for the gym. And my buddy Aaron, who does everything behind the scenes that you'll probably never see his face. But he helps make everything run. And the four of us do such an amazing job. And like you said, we have such an amazing team that is able to help us carry out the vision we have. So we built that, and that's what allowed us to move down here, was to have that. And once we built this, I wasn't aware that there were other people in Canggu living there that thought the same thing. Once we opened, within the first week, there was a large exodus of expats relocating from Canggu down to Uluwatu. That's kind of how we decided to open the gym.
Crazy. Yeah. And this is what I said just before, is like, it's this destination spot. People are coming to Uluwatu for Bambu,
which is wild.
Which is wild. And so to see the population, the development of Uluwatu grow so much, it's like, it's got to be a big contributing factor, which is really cool. But you've been with Carrie for coming on 14 years. You married within 5 months of meeting her.
Correct.
How did you know she was the one so quickly?
Before I even talked to her, I knew. It's kind of a running joke, man. Like I worked with a buddy of mine who Carrie was his roommate back then. I won't get into why, but I owed him a favor. He did something pretty significant for me, saved my life. Was like, hey man, like, take this girl out. She's pretty cool. Like, show her a good time. And I was like, no, I'm good. Thanks, bro. I appreciate the setup, but no, thank you. And he was like, do me a solid. Like, she's looking for like a nice guy to take her out. Like, and I was like, okay. So met her. She was working at a nightclub then, doing bottle service, like, young gypsies do. We were both living in Germany then. I walked in the club and invited all my boys, went to the table, and they all were there before I was. I showed up, fashionably late. Walked in, looked straight at her from across, and I just knew that was her. And I said to myself, I'm like, fuck, this girl's gonna ruin my life. And I didn't mean that in a bad way, because like I told you, I had no plans on ever getting married. My plans were to not get married, because the plans that I had for myself involved having no family connection. I at that point I lived in Germany. It's funny, if my family does listen to this will be the first time they hear it. But like, I started to kind of distance myself, not calling home as much, trying to like have me not be a burden or me be a thought, because of the things that I wanted to achieve and what I wanted to get into. That's the kind of stuff you just don't have families for. So met her, and I knew that that's not the path that I could go down anymore, because I told myself I would only do that if these variables were met. So we met, and I've never felt about a woman the way that I feel about Carrie. She's one hell of a fucking woman, man. And she's very different now to what she was back then, but she also isn't. The potential that she grew into, when you met her back then, you'd know that she was destined for greatness. And it's inspiring to watch how she operates. But yeah, so we got married quite quickly. We didn't meet each other's families until our wedding day. Got married in the living room of my mom's house. And it wasn't even meant to be like a thing. It was just like I was like, cool, we're going to, tithe up the courthouse, and I'm going to deploy. I want to make sure she's safe and taken care of in case I don't come back. And my mom was like, fucking absolutely not. My baby boy is not going to just go do this thing at a courthouse. So she set up this thing at her house with like, the justice of peace. And that was really it. So yeah, it was, we were meant to do an actual wedding later on, but come to find out it's just too expensive. And also we didn't see the point spending 50 grand US on a wedding for other people and not us. And we used that money to invest in our first property, which we sold to help fund the gym. So it's, it's a whirlwind. Yeah.
I want to talk a lot more about that. You said something there just before we dive into that. You said that there was a period in your life where you believed that you were going to live a life where you had no family connection. Why? Do you know back then why you didn't want any connection to family?
It wasn't that I didn't want it. It was more, that's what I thought was necessary to be able to have the impact I wanted to have in this life at that moment of what I knew I wanted to do. You go and you read these books about people you've never heard of that have had such a impact on society, making a big difference for things, right? That's what I wanted to do. I thought that people didn't do that anymore. Everyone was so caught up in being selfish and all that stuff. And for me, I was like, I think I have the right mindset and skill set to go make a positive change and have be a force of positive, an instrument to help like things get better. But obviously things change, and you have to reanalyze like with new information when it comes in, like what your life is meant to be. And I'm a huge proponent of that, reanalyzing situations, reanalyzing friendships, reanalyzing everything, because you could be great friends with somebody, but then things change, and that friendship or situation, whatever it is, has to change as well, or else you're trying to people please. And you're also not allowing yourself to grow in the way that you want to grow. Like people hate saying no to people because they feel like, they're scared of how it's going to make them feel. But also like if you say no, if you're doing it for the right reason, you shouldn't be apologetic. And if they're an actual friend, they should be supportive, or, look at themselves and be like, why is this happening for them?
Why did you feel like you couldn't have both? Why couldn't you make massive change plus have family in your life? Because obviously like when I look at it, your parents, I mean, I'm making an assumption here, but I would assume that they really wanted you to be in their life.
Of course.
And like for me, and the reason this is relevant for me right now is the older I'm getting, the more respect I'm having for my parents. I think I went through this phase where I wanted to distance myself. I moved away from them to a different state straight after my 18th birthday and distanced myself from my family. And I didn't call as much, and I was busy doing my own thing on my mission. And the older I'm getting, the more I feel like I'm respecting them a lot more and listening to them more and just respecting how much they've done for me. And so I'm really curious to know what was going on in your mind when you thought, okay, no, I can't have both. I can't have this family connection and chase this major impact that I'm trying to make.
Mine was within the military. So it was not a civilian thing. Now, it was more of a collateral damage thing. Like if I would go do things that I want to do, which I'm not going to speak really in depth about. I don't mean to be ominous. But like if you have family and you're going and doing things that can be quite dangerous, a lot of times if someone doesn't appreciate what you're doing and they know who you are, the first thing they'll do to make you succumb to what they want is go to your family. And that's the exact reason why I did not want to involve them, even as like, not being involved or not even knowing where I was or what I did or any of that. If you ask my parents now what I did, they have no idea for a reason. Even my wife, you ask Carrie, she's like, he did some things I don't really know, but I know they were hard. You know what I mean? Like, and it's one of those things where I chose to not talk about what I really did in depth because I didn't want anyone to get hurt. And it was not because I didn't want them in my life. I did. One of the hardest decisions that I had to make before I met Carrie was to do that, was to make the conscious decision like, okay, this is going to be really challenging to do, but it's for the best for them. And it's also for the best for me to not have those potential distractions if I actually did want to go and achieve the things that I set out to achieve. And yeah, it's tough to think about now, like where I'm at. I'm 36. That was back when I was 19 and a half, 20 of these like goals that I set right when I got to my first unit. And I was like, okay, I want to do something that I'm proud of.
You mentioned the word burden before. You didn't want to be a burden on them in a sense. Hey, you just felt like you wanted to do something and you didn't want it to impact them in any negative way. So you chose to maybe distance yourself from them.
Yeah, the worry that it would take for them to think about like, what's Will doing? Is he okay? How is his health? Is he happy? All things that are not of they don't need to worry about those things, but they will. I'm the youngest. My sister, I have one sibling. I'm the youngest, so I'm the baby boy, right? Like that's like it'll always be my mom. Everyone calls me Will. And it's a funny story how like that nickname came about. But like growing up, Billy, like, or just my last name. And then it went from me going from Billy to Will. There was a very large change in that like shift of like me going into the military and doing that. But now every time I go home, I go, oh, hey, Billy. And it's such a strange thing to hear. And Carrie's like, it's so weird to hear you.
Your name is Billy?
So my name is William. But in America, you have like nicknames for everything. Like Robert, you get called Bob or Dick. It's very strange nicknames. So for me, growing up, my dad is William as well. His name is Bill. So I'm the same name as him, but everyone called me Billy. And that's just what it was, and until I essentially got in the military. And then I started going by Will. Very random, but not very funny story, but very funny. And that's how it stuck. So I met Carrie, and it was, I changed how I introduced myself to everyone as Will, because it was a new me, a new chapter that I was moving forward with.
So this is really interesting, because you had this period where you were kind of isolating yourself. And as we've spoken about, it was this thing of not wanting them to have to worry, not wanting them to unnecessarily think about things that maybe they don't need to. So you just refrain from telling them certain things. And then you even mentioned that Carrie still doesn't know to this day some of the stuff you were doing. She just goes, oh, Will was doing something. I don't know what he was doing. So it's a little bit mysterious in the sense of what you've done. To this day, do you still think it's hard to open up about certain things because you don't want to be a burden to people? Or is it by choice you maybe don't do that? Or is things different now in your life? We're going to get right back to the episode in just 1 minute, but I need to tell you about this thing that is on my wrist called a Whoop, the ultimate health and fitness tracker. If you've not seen this thing already, you are probably living under a rock, because it is the #1 health and fitness tracker. It's a game changer for me and millions of people all around the world when it comes to achieving your health and fitness goals. One of the main things I love about the Whoop is the sleep coach. Whoop tracks my sleep, and it gives me a score based on how well I've performed. And it also gives me all the other metrics, like how much deep, how much REM sleep I got, how many times I woke up throughout the night. And then I can use all of those metrics to then tell me how I need to recover, so then I'm ready to attack the next day's activities. I love this thing. It's a game changer, and the only time it leaves my wrist is when I'm changing the color, because they have so many awesome bands. If you want to try out Whoop for yourself, you can go to the link in the description or the show notes below, or go to join.whoop.com/Chris, and you'll get 1 month completely free, and they'll send you a band to try for yourself. And if you do not love it, you can send it back risk-free. Once again, go to the link in the description or the show notes below, or go to join.whoop.com/Chris, and you'll get 1 month completely free. Let's get right back to the episode. To this day, do you still think it's hard to open up about certain things because you don't want to be a burden to people? Or is it by choice you maybe don't do that? Or is things different now in your life?
It's by choice, and more so relatability. Like I'm very much fine with talking about everything. I'm fine with the decisions that I made, and some challenging, some not challenging, some justified, some not. But talking to somebody about like the life of a podcaster, right? For you, speaking to someone that doesn't know anything about podcasts, it's going to be hard for someone on the other end to understand and draw parallels. And that's in those conversations at that caliber and that specific and that important to me. I need to know the person on the other side actually understands what I'm saying, which is not a lot of people from that. There's one man in particular that I talk to frequently from my military experience. The only guy that I'll really open up to because he was there with me a lot of it. One other guy that is a friend of mine that's here in Bali. He's done similar things in another nation's military. So there's a very large level of understanding there. That level of understanding is something I don't feel I have with a lot of people. So I have other things to talk about, and I have other things that I'm doing. My military experience, I hardly talk about it. It does not define me. And a lot of veterans, when they get out, it does define them. And that's something when I got out, I was very adamant to make sure that when I met someone, it wasn't, hi, I'm Will. I'm a US military veteran. That's like a thing where like if I share with someone, it's because they ask and there's trust built. But it's not what I lead with, and not even second what I lead with.
See, it's so interesting because people hold that title to such high regard. Like it's such a respectful thing. And then you say that, you don't want to lead with it. It's only a thing that you share to people that can relate to your experiences, or at least there's some trust built there. It's a fascinating perspective, very, very humble and noble approach, which is really cool. That thing around relatability is interesting, not wanting to share something to someone if you don't think that they've experienced something similar that they can relate to. I kind of get that because sometimes you're explaining yourself and it's hard for someone to truly understand what you're going through. And so you kind of feel pointless sharing something with them because you go, well, you don't even get it. Is that the frame that you're thinking from?
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like effective communication is very important to me. So much so it's a running joke with Carrie and I now, but when I was doing some additional like schooling, I wrote a thesis paper, like an 11 or 13 page paper on the importance of effective communication in relationships. Carrie to this day has still never read it. And it's funny because it's just like how Carrie and I are, but we communicate so well. We have to. We have an intertangled life of our marriage, all of our working things. We're each involved in everything that we do. And we're around each other all the time. And sometimes we're not during the day. But I think that relatability, people like to hear themselves talk. A lot of people think that if I speak to you, that it makes me feel better. I don't feel that. If I share something with you, it's not because it makes me feel better. So there are points where like, if I was not sharing things and whatever, and a lot of times Carrie would be like, why don't you want to talk to me about stuff? And it's like, it's not that I don't want to talk to you. I don't need to. But then she said something to me that was very profound. She was like, but it makes me feel better to understand why you feel the way you feel. And it was then that I realized that effective communication isn't only what I'm communicating, what I need to them, it's also understanding the needs of the person you're communicating to. So from that day on, whenever like, if I was going through like a challenging part, like, mentally and whatever, there's certain dates out of the year that don't bode well with me. Birthday is one of them. A few other selected dates, and Carrie knows when those are and why. And she'll know that like my mood might dip. I might act a little bit differently, but it's because like, okay, I'm handling the things that I need to handle on my own, and that's very much okay. When she didn't know that, she thought that she did something, and I was upset with her. So what I would start doing now is I will write down, here's how I'm feeling, and I'll read it to her. Like, hey, this is more of an update for you, not because I need someone to talk to. And I know if I need to, she's there. And I have the two guys I just mentioned that I could call anytime to talk about anything with. And those three people, that's all I need to talk to for me, right? And I think that's the biggest thing is relatability. Like someone that either understands you as a person fully, Carrie, or someone that can understand the things that you're talking about, the two guys, without any judgment. And I don't trust anyone else to not judge me in the littlest way if I give them some kind of information. And that's the hard part, right? Is trust. We talked about building trust and how you do that genuinely.
Yeah, effective communication. That's so fascinating because you have this, yes, as the main thing with effective communication is understanding both people as well so that then they can respect each other. We talk about respect heaps on this chat, but like I go back to my best friend, Sam. He's that guy where I can just share. He's the only person I feel I can share something with zero judgment. And he just gets me. He just gets it. I think because we've done so much together and experienced a lot of the lows and highs together. I feel like that polarity of experiences together is what brings you closer. And so he's this person that I just feel like I can share everything to. And the feeling you have when you share a challenge or something that's hard for you to share to that person, the feeling that you get from that clarity, that feeling of being understood in a sense, just because they get it, it's effective. It's that really good communication. And that's interesting when it comes down to your life partner being Carrie. You know, you feel something, write it down, read it to her as an update. She can then stack that as deeper understanding of you and what you're going through in those times. So then when similar things pop up again, she can then go, oh, okay, I get it. I get what he's going through. He needs this space. He needs this time to process whatever he's going through. Yeah, it's really cool. And you've 14 years, married 5 months, business together, doing everything together. How is balancing life and work, and is it challenging, or have you got it down to a good thing? But doing everything together with Carrie, is there like this anything that you do to help balance that business and life?
No. The thing is, we both...
Or is balance not a thing?
It's not a thing. We tried to do that. And she was very conscious about like, okay, like, you know, after this time, we're not going to talk about work, or like we're going to go on a trip and it's not about work. But we both do things that we're so passionate about, and it's excitable and there's purpose in it. So it's not like talking about work. Work's such a strange word. But like we get to share like the wins that we've had, or, hey, there's this struggle that I'm having, this challenge that I'm having, getting the perspective of someone who gets that person and also gets the business and also isn't afraid to call them up on their stuff. Like if I'm doing something that is what I think is the right way, Carrie be like, I love you, but like you're wrong. You need to reconsider and think about it from a different perspective. And same with me to her. So now it's kind of like shifted to now we don't try to like not talk about stuff. It's more about like, hey, like, all right, like we're going to sit down and talk about this, or I have this thing that I'm thinking of. And, you know, if you want the person to give feedback or just listen. And that's kind of the thing is like the other day, Carrie came to me with something and, you know, a struggle point. And I was like, do you want me just to listen, or do you want me to be helpful? And she was like, I just want you to listen. I don't want any feedback. And I was like, great.
That is being helpful.
I can do that. Great. And, you know, I want to help. Obviously, like being her husband, I always want to help. But like also helping her always is not helping her. You know, it's her helping me always is not helping, because like I need to struggle and figure things out. She needs to struggle and figure things out. Those like challenge points and failure points are where you learn and get better and know what to do in the future.
Yeah. We don't look for failures when there's a trophy, when you're winning. A lot of the time we don't look for what went wrong when we're winning. We only look when there's a problem or when we've lost. Mm-hmm. And so going through those challenges and the levels of being uncomfortable is the only way you can kind of get comfortable, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And we've spoken a lot about the journey. You know, I was really, and this is why we spoke a lot about the military stuff, because I was really fascinated by the character that you earn in that and the different lessons that you learn throughout that journey. But then it's really cool to see, like, I like to zoom out, and I feel like the older I'm getting, I like to be able to see people that are kind of mastering a lot of areas of life, or at least operating at a really high standard, like having a marriage that's long lasting. Like there's a level of respect garnered for even just having that and navigating. Then you got the business aspect, and the journey that you've been through is really inspiring. Would you say that your hardest times in life were in the military or afterwards?
Both. I'd say I'm more well equipped now to deal with challenging situations, and I still deal with them. Like Carrie and I have a handful of different businesses that we work to operate all of them together, separate, things like that. But have you heard the term relative intensity? I'm sure you have.
No, I haven't.
So okay, the hardest thing that you've ever dealt with in your life is your 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
It's what you've actually experienced. The hardest thing I've ever dealt with is my 10 out of 10. You look at those together, they're both 10 out of 10s. But like people often they'll like, oh man, like they'll make these like grandiose in general assumptions like, oh man, like you were in the military. Like, oh, you must have like dealt with some shit. And I'm like, well, you lived a life. Like you must have dealt with some shit. Yeah, but like it's not as bad as yours. But how do you know that?
It's relative.
How do you know that? It's relative. Your hardest thing that you've ever dealt with in your life, it's like, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. So when I was in mine, it was the same reaction. That's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I think people try to like downplay their hardest things because but then they do that, they don't learn from it. And that's the issue, is they're taking a valuable lesson away from themselves of learning about themselves, which it's hard to do. Because like now, this day and age, everything's so fucking easy. Life is easy. Like you don't have a job, go collect unemployment. Like you're not good at your job. Okay, maybe everyone will make things easier for me and pick up my slack instead of calling people up on it or going and finding a fucking job. That's the thing, is like, I think that relative intensity is important. So I think my hardest thing is the same as yours.
I love this concept. Hard is only relative to what hard you've experienced in the past. And there's a level of peace in understanding that. Because then when you go through an extreme hard and you're sitting in it going, this is the hardest thing I've ever been through, you can then know that next time I go through something at this level of intensity or worse, I'm not going to be fazed by it as much because I've overcome this one. So it kind of makes your your relativity a lot higher. So then you don't get fazed as much. And so it's like this thing of like, everything that you're struggling with right now, in the future, you will not struggle with because you are increasing your threshold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the same thing in business, right? Like you start a business, fuck man, there's so many things going on, but your ability to manage high levels of stress simultaneously will allow you to get better with managing those stressors that come in. It's like every day in the gym, like you walk in, you're like, man, I love the gym. I'm here, I'm doing your thing. I walk in and I'm like, right, the fuck's going on today? Like what needs to be sorted out? And that's the thing, is like, I know what coming into it, I know what I'm expecting. And sometimes there's things like, some of the things I thought I've seen everything going into a gym every day. 2.5 years now, I've been at Bambu and done everything there. And every day I come in, I'm like, you fucking think you see everything. And you see something new. And it's amazing because like in life, you take that perspective into like life, you think you see everything. And then every day something else comes up and you're like, fuck me. Like, absolutely not. I have not seen everything. And the day you do see everything, then life gets boring.
But that's the great thing, is I don't think you ever see that day because you're constantly learning. I just love this concept around being able to reframe the hard time you're going through as a cost to make this hard time easier to go through. Like being able to, when you're in the mud and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, or you're struggling to even progress through this hard time, being able to sit there and go, this time is only going to get easier because next time I get in this, I'm going to be able, it's relative, my threshold's higher. There's a level of peace and ease that comes with that thought, because I go, yeah, it's hard, but I'm just making my character stronger so I can go through all of this better. And it's the same when you're talking about finding all of these new problems in the gym. no matter how little they are, they're nuances and these little challenges that you can never plan for, you can never expect. But then once you overcome that, you're sharpening the sword of what you know and what you don't know. And then it becomes easier to go through all the things that you're going through in your life. Ability to become calm in the chaos. The only way to do that is by going through more chaos.
Yeah. And being uncomfortable and being in those situations.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the more uncomfortable you can be, you go back to that situation, you'll be more comfortable than you were last time. And if you expose yourself to those things over time, you'll be able to handle a lot more things that people perceive as stressful. All the time I get people being like, man, I don't know how you and Carrie do all the things you do. And I'm like, it's actually not fucking hard. Like, you just do them. And then like, well, that didn't work out. And you do it different the next time. And then like, eventually you're able to balance things more so than someone else can balance one. And it's not because someone's better than someone else. It's because, one, they have help. They have a team that can help them, or they've just become so accustomed to that level of operating where it's second nature to them. Them running a few things is the same as one person running one. And as you get more experience, that's just how it goes.
I love that, man. And just before we wrap up the show, is there anything that's been on your mind recently? Is there anything that you've been thinking about that you think would be valuable to share, or you think we've covered a lot today?
It's funny. The first thing that comes to mind is personal responsibility. That's a whole other topic.
What do you mean by that?
People just taking responsibility for their own actions. It's people expecting other people to do things for them, solve their own problems, instead of them being like, or hey, like, I'm the problem here. Like, maybe I'm the problem in this situation, instead of thinking it's always someone else. And it's like people taking responsibility for their own actions.
Yeah, Jocko Willink says extreme ownership, like good, like taking on board and kind of not blaming everything on you in a sense, but just taking ownership on everything that happens in your life and being like, good, like it's happened, move forward, take that ownership.
It's funny the respect that you get from people. Like, imagine that you make a mistake. Or you did something and it was maybe not the right thing to do, and someone calls you up on it. If you just be like, that's my bad. Like, yep, I did that. This is why I did it. I'm sorry. And move forward. Instead of just like biting your tongue and not saying anything.
Yeah.
The gravity of those two different responses could not be more opposite. And the older I get, like, you make a decision with the information you have at the time. New information comes in, like, you need to reassess and make a decision. And if you make a decision that's better for you and someone else doesn't like it, I'm sorry it made you feel that way, but I'm not sorry the decision was made, because I didn't make it out of malicious intent. It was what I felt was best for me. And a good friend of mine here in Bali told me something once when I had a really close friend of mine made a commitment to do something with me. And I was relying on him, and he made a change in his life that he needed to make. And it was essentially, he had to not commit or like decommit to what he committed to with me. And it was tough, because like I felt betrayed, abandoned, that there was no care. But then, I wasn't talking about this situation to the guy, but I was talking about something came up where something like that happened. And the guy was like, people will show up in your life the way they want to. And it might not be the way you want them to, but you have to respect how they show up in your life regardless. Or else, like, you're not going to be friends with everyone, because everyone doesn't work for you. Everyone doesn't do things for you. It's a very like self-centered approach. And that said, when I think of that, it's like, yeah, people will show up the way they're going to in your life, and you can either respect that or not. And you don't have to, but like, if you don't respect someone, you shouldn't be around them.
It's this approach as well of when people feel like, oh, these people treated me bad, or they think about me this way, but it's so not true. And it's this thing where you're like, if someone's treating you bad, or not treating you bad, if someone is saying like you've made them feel a certain way, don't push it back on them and say, oh, that's their problem that they feel that way. You're shutting off all your opportunity to grow here. Being able to see someone look at you in a certain way and go, okay, well, the reality is I've made them feel that way. So what have I done to make them feel that way? Potentially, you are not in the wrong, but there is a massive chance there is a way that you can improve the way you are and grow as a person
100%.
so that they can actually look at you in a respectful manner. I think when someone kind of is saying something to you that doesn't feel nice for you to hear, I like to take that as best as you can as a lesson to be able to grow for yourself. It's that extreme ownership piece. I think just being able to take ownership of the good, the bad, the ugly, being able to embody everything about your life and realizing that it's on you is a way to enable you to grow. I think we just shut things down too often and make people kind of, I don't know, we just have this victim mentality, a lot of people, where they...
Fuck me, that couldn't hit home better, more than it does right now, but yeah.
Yeah. It's a victim mentality where it's nothing's your fault.
Yeah.
Nothing is your fault. When the reality is everything is your fault. I don't even care if it's not. It's your fault. Because what benefit does it have thinking that it isn't?
But that it turns around to the personal responsibility. If someone is consistently in a victim state of mind, like, I can't believe this happened to me. Why would they do this to me? And it's like, well, maybe they didn't do it to you, but you took it that way, and your perspective is different than the way they intended. And the person that made you feel that way, maybe they don't know that made you feel that way. So have that conversation. Hey, like, you did this. It made me feel this way. It's literally that easy.
Yeah.
Because you can say those words like, you did this. It made me feel this way. And then you talk about it. And if one of those two sides either can't come to the table or care enough to actually talk about it, one, they're not your friend. And two, if they don't care enough, then it's not a you thing, it's a them thing. And you tried. So you tried to bridge that gap, like you said. Like, if you just, no, it's not my fault, and you walk away, you're not being part of a solution-oriented approach to fixing an issue. And that's an issue like this, the victim mentality thing, man. It's constant.
You know, the other thing about it, which I'm pretty passionate about, is when you have a victim mentality and you put things on other people, typically the things you're putting on other people are playing on your mind. You don't like the thought of them, so you put them on other people. The problem is when you don't take ownership and you put it on someone else, you are putting your feelings and you're putting the control out of your own hands on how you feel into someone else's, because you're not taking ownership and being able to improve on the things. You're basically putting it on someone else, saying it's not their fault, and then you're dwelling in that thought because you can't even control the change because it's in their hands. And so without taking ownership, you're putting the control of how you feel on someone else. And so you're removing your control of your emotions too. And so it's this thing where you go, you're victiming, so you're not improving as a person, but then you're also not in control of how you feel, because they can then go and do that again. And then then you feel the same way. And then you just go down these negative loops as well. I just think like there's no benefit in putting it on someone else in any manner.
Because the thing is too, is the people that are in that victim like mindset is, instead of talking and bringing it up with the person to their face that they have the problem with or whatever, they will then go and speak about the things to people that aren't even involved. And that's what like a lot of people are fearful of, right? Is like what they think of me. You know, the fear we talked about just kind of start off our chat. Then they'll go and they'll talk to someone else, and then they're scared of somebody else developing a perspective of who they are based off of someone else's perspective and their feelings. And like for me, I'm certain I don't try to make people happy. Like every person, I'm not a people pleaser. I'm very aware that things that I've done have made people not like me or whatever. I really don't care. But if someone goes and tells someone else and tries to ruin my name or do something, if they come and meet me, I know, I'm very confident that the person that I am, I'm a genuine person. I do things that I feel are right and fair. So if they come and meet me and they can draw their own conclusion and put those feelings aside, no problem. No one's ever going to make me look bad if they know me as a person. But like, I also can't control what people say. And that's learning to control the controllables and then leave the uncontrollables to like, let the pieces fall where they may.
Yeah. That just comes down to that thing as well. When you meet someone, you also meet their friends. The way you judge someone is only on the information you have about that person. So if you've not met someone or you've only met them once, but when you met them, they were in a shit mood and they gave off this really bad vibe, that is their information on you.
Yeah.
So then when they're hanging out with their friends and they go, oh, have you heard about this guy, Will, who owns Bambu? And they've seen you on some bad day and that's their only information they have. They're going to be like to their friends, oh yeah, he's a bit of a dick, isn't he? And then next minute, all of their friends view you as a dick because they've not met you either. And so, but the thing is sometimes you have people that have this malicious intent where something didn't go their way. They're a victim in their mindset. So they don't blame it on themselves. They create a story about you that isn't true. Then they go and tell their friends that story that isn't true, that didn't happen. But then their friends don't know that, so they still have the same perception of you. And so I try and be really careful with the people around me is when I'm finding people have a victim mentality or they're talking negatively about people that I've had such great experiences with, I go, how are you talking about me to all of your friends? Because I'm hearing all these negative things about people that I've had amazing experiences with. And so I get worried about that. And not worried about that, but I just don't have time for people like that in my life, because when you see someone take ownership, there's a level of respect that I garner to them, because I go, yes, that's not an easy thing to do, but you've just done it willingly and you've onboarded that. Now there's room and you're conscious of the change you need to make. And there's a level of respect because it's an uncomfortable thing to do. We can easily just put it on someone else, push it on someone else, get a little dopamine hit right in the moment there because we've put it on someone else and we feel good about that because there's no problems with us, and then get on with your day. Whereas when you take ownership, that requires a lot of hard work, a lot of growth, and that typically can be a hard thing. But then on the other side of that, there's so much reward and just so much character building that is so attractive in a person.
I know you want to wrap up, but you've been asking me questions now for an hour. I'm going to ask you one. Same question. What has been on your mind lately that you feel is something worth sharing?
Asking the host a question. We love this. Something I've been thinking about recently, which is interesting, is it's tying back into hard times. And I had this thought around, imagine if we can reframe any challenge that we're going through and feel the same way we would feel if we went to an ice cream shop, ordered vanilla ice cream, and they gave us chocolate. So we wanted vanilla ice cream, we really wanted that creamy vanilla, but they served us chocolate. We still like chocolate, but we really wanted that. And so it sucks that we got the other flavor, but we still eat it anyway because we're okay. Imagine if we were going through the most extreme hard that we've been through and we could brush it off like we just got the wrong flavored ice cream. I think it's not something we can do. It comes down to this relativity, right? Are we like, what hard have we been through in the past? But I think if that can be a goal that we're striving towards, going to not dwell on the hard time and move forward as quick as we possibly can and treat it like a little kid would cry over getting the wrong ice cream, treat it as that severity, we can go through those hard times easier. I think we build up these stories in our head that there are very severe things happening in our life. And then what happens is we get to the other side and go, oh shit, that actually was this is what happens is when I ask someone, what has been the hardest times of your life? And they explain them. And then I say, would you change that or take back that hard time? And they go, well, no, because that was life-changing for me. It made me who I am today. And so I go, okay, so you wouldn't change the hard time you went through. So you're happy you went through that hard time. You wouldn't change it. So if you know that, if that's your pattern, every hard time you go through are the most life-changing moments of your life. Then when you go through another hard time, if you know, and that's your pattern, that that is going to change your life for the better, you can go through that easier. So may as well just treat it like we've got served the wrong flavored ice cream instead of gone through this extreme challenge. We can go through that easier. And so I've been pondering on this thought a little bit of like the less we dwell and the less we can react about the hard time, the better. Because if we know that the pattern is that the hard time is the most life-changing, it's actually a good thing. I just love playing on this concept of reframing a hard as a good, because there probably is some good in that. And so that's my little thought for as we conclude this podcast.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate you, dude. And I just want to commend you for everything that you're doing. It's really inspiring. And that's why when you showed me around some of the developments, I was asking you a couple of questions about like, what's the hardest thing? And it's really interesting hearing your insight, and you've got some hidden wisdom and a very calm nature that is very inspiring, and I love it. So I just want to commend you for everything that you're doing, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
It's been awesome. And if you guys have made it to the end, I'll leave all of Will's details in the show notes and the description below, and definitely go and check out Bambu if you're ever in Uluwatu, or for that matter, come to Uluwatu just so you can check out Bambu, because that's what most people seem to do. They park up shop there for a while, and such an amazing environment, such an amazing crew of people, and the team have made such an awesome space there for people to come in. So if you've enjoyed the show, leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps the show grow, helps us keep getting amazing people just like Will back on the show so we can keep on growing together. And finally, do us a little favor. Screenshot this episode and post it on your story and tag us just to let us know that you've enjoyed it and you've made it to the end. I'll be expressing my gratitude to all of you guys, but we are going to sign out for this week. But I'll see you next week.
Later, guys.
Later, guys. How good?
How good.
Oh, appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, that was a great chat.